It's mid-June and there's steam on my breath. Scotland. So this is part 2 of the office. We've got insulation to do, we have plaster to do, we have some boarding, some painting, we have corrugated roofing sheets, we have the wiring for the lights and the sockets, we've got some 3D printing, some 3D modelling, some 3D scanning. So we've got so much to get on with. I think we'll just go, won't we? Don't look, because this is that's it, already done. First time I had to go with plasterboard, perhaps 10 years ago, I would treat it like a piece of ply or a piece of chipboard or something. I'd try and cut it to the correct dimension and then come to the wall and, you know, try and screw it to the wall as you would do. And then I watched my plasterers that we had at the time, Scott and Nicky, and they did it so quick and the cuts were perfect. And I was like, how'd you do that? And they were like, oh, watch this. And they just put the board on the wall uncut, and then they get a knife and then they just mark like that. And then you have to be fairly, like if you do it gently, it might break the wrong way. So they score one side and then they score along the crease on this side. And then you just break it back like that and you've got this perfect edge rather than spending ages trying to cut it, measure it, especially if the walls aren't square. You have to plan it because, for example, the end here, I'm going to be putting a piece of plasterboard on, which means you have to think about where, which order you're going to do it. For example, if you were going to put this side on first, you'd want to stick this out a little bit, or you'd want to cut this first and this first. So there's a bit of planning involved, and you can't do every single piece because you can't cut the top here, for example. So you've got a board there, you're going to have to cut that on the trestles. You can't kind of put this on. I suppose you could, and then you could score there, but you've got no straight line. So it works for the ends or the edges that you're going to do. And sometimes if you're doing it around the corner of a wall, you might cut that end, and then you might run your board that way, butt this up and then cut the other end. So there's a bit of planning, but it's far better than cutting a piece of plasterboard. It doesn't fit, you put it on the wall, you have to take it off, you have to cut it again, or you cut it too short. It's far quicker. It's just one of those tricks of the trade that I'm really pleased I picked up from them. So I was thinking about what to do at the edges here, because you see the piece of plasterboard in the middle doesn't go all the way to the end there, doesn't go all the way to the end there, and it's kind of this self-standing section in the middle that's not attached anywhere. And I thought it might be fun to try and have a go at something a bit experimental, seeing as we all know the whole place here is a bit wonky. So if this doesn't work, I've done it in a place that doesn't really matter too much. So I'm going to try and curve the ends. So I'm going to plaster this all in one go. So I'm going to do this side and this side together. I'm going to plaster it around like that, and I'm going to curve the plaster around the ends. I should probably get some bonding compound to fill in these gaps, but I haven't got any, so I'm going to just fill it with multi-finish. And as I said, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm going to put tape around it so that it's got some extra strength, but I thought it'd be a bit more interesting than just a, you know, normal square wall. So I think if I did this again, what I did, I can probably show you a bit easier over this side, was I left a sort of gap there, probably taking inspiration from welding, because when you weld, you know, if you have a gap to fill, the weld makes it stronger. Thinking I could fill that with plaster and therefore make it a bit stronger. I'm actually not sure if that's the case. I don't know if that's going to work or not, because I didn't do it on this section here, and I've sanded it, and it's a nice smooth radius. So we'll see whether this bit survives a bit better, because that has plasterboard that's sanded all around, and we'll see if the bits with the gap in between that we fill with plaster when we come around here and plaster performs any better. I don't know, but we'll see. I think I'm not going for exact radiuses. If you were, I would draw a pencil line down this side, and then sand to those lines. I'm going for a bit more of an, well, I don't have the time to do that. If this was inside a house and it was my house, I probably would do that. But I'm just after an effect, and it's a bit of a test, so we're going for a bit of a loose look rather than a really tight radius. I'm probably going to get a piece of gutter and use that as my trowel on this side, just to get a, you know, close radius. But we're not going for perfection. Right, so that's the door fitted. I'm biding my time whilst I'm waiting for the delivery from Wix with all of our sockets and plugs and stuff on, because although I had some bits, I do need some extras. So I'm doing the first fix or second fix electric now, because I want to see if there's any problems before I've boarded all the walls. So I'm trying to get that. I'm no electrician, and the likelihood of issues with me is a little higher than if I was fully trained. So I I want to get them all tested first, and then we'll put the boards on. So whilst I'm waiting for the delivery, I thought I'd get the door on. In the last video, I had a trend hinge jig, and I was kind of thinking about talking about it, but the video was too long. And what I kind of said that I didn't put in the video was that I don't know if I'd recommend it. Not because it's not good, because it's very good, but if you're doing one door, it takes just as long to set the jig up as it would to just hand cut the hinges. So I had it because I cut a lot of doors on the previous project, but I don't know if you need it. But one thing I would recommend is one of these, which is a self-centering drill bit. And when I was first doing doors, I didn't get one of these. And when you drill into the hinge screw holes, if it's a tiny bit off, you'll end up pulling the hinge. And if you saw how I did the door there, which is probably not how you're supposed to do it, I kind of get the door roughly in the right space, screw the screws in most of the way, and then kind of jiggle the door and then set the screw in. And if the screw wasn't in exactly the right place, which is only going to be the case if you've used a self-centering drill bit, you'll find that as you try and set the door, it'll pull the hinge in the wrong direction. So I would say hinge jig, yeah, it's good, but if you're only doing 1 or 2 doors, probably just take your time on it and cut them yourself. But one of these is you really do need one of these. I went with shuttering ply for the top story because the cost was just so much for any kind of ply alternative. So we chose this because it's far cheaper, but it looks really rough. I mean, it's almost too rough. Like there's rough and rustic, like that's the metal roofing panels that we're going to go for. And then there's actually rough, and this is just rough. So I'm going to paint it to give it a little bit of a nicer feel up here, because you're going to be quite close to the walls. In the office, they're going to be nice to look at, but you're not necessarily going to be right up against it up here because the ceiling heights are low, and because it's a beanbag TV area, you're going to be right up and looking at it. So I'm going to give it a paint. The masking that I've done here isn't so I've got a nice clean line, although that'll help. It's because I don't want splatters of paint on the nice ply down here, and you know it's going to happen even if I'm really careful. So I'm going to roll some paint on here before I put the sockets on, so I don't have to mask up all the sockets and lights. And then I'm going to put a lot of sockets and lights on up here, and then I'm going to get the rest of the boarding on behind me, but I'm going to paint them before I put them on, so it's a bit easier. My brother and I made a pallet wood wall where we were before, and I learned the hard way that you need to make sure your timbers are dry before fixing them to a panel, because they'll shrink slightly and you'll end up with gaps in between each of the panels. So it's not ideal because I'm drying them in here and the moisture is all escaping there, but I have got the other 2 doors open to vent anything out, and then I've got the rest all drying as best they can in the sun over here. So you really want to get them I mean, they don't need to be completely dry, but you don't want to go fixing anything together in panels if they're as wet as that one is there, because they'll just shrink and you'll have gaps in between every single board. So you want to try and make sure they're as dry as they possibly can be, so they stay nice and tight. I hate the look of pressure treated timber. It's just so ugly, so ugly. But they didn't do brown gravel boards. That's what you call these because they're designed for the bottom of fences where you're going to put the gravel up against it. They didn't have brown, they had green, and green's even uglier than the brown. So I got this stain to stain it. And it looks really good. We did some shusugi ban where we were previously, which is where you burn it up. It's a Japanese technique. You burn up the surface, and we wire brushed it off again, and it leaves this lovely chocolate brown surface. And we did that because it was pressure treated timber again, and it turned what was a really cheap, horrible timber into a really luxury looking thing. It had a nice sheen to it. This is not anywhere near that, but this has taken me an hour to paint. That took weeks to do. I think that's come out really nicely. It's called, was it stable coat for like horse stables, I suppose. So I mean, it's a good sign when it's that kind of barn look, because that's what we're going for. So we're gonna put these on the ceiling in there, and I just couldn't face being that close to that horrible green pressure treated look. So I've set the laser up for the first run because if you're doing something like this, I've cut each length of these gravel boards in half, because although they were long enough, I'd never get that length up here because there's no, it's as wide as the whole ceiling. So that's why I've done that. But I've run the laser because if you've got two pieces like this and they, we know the wall's out straight here, then you'd end up with it kind of not straight, then your whole run as you go all the way down will be not straight. So yeah, I mean, I can see it's pretty off already, but at least the laser gives us an indication. And this first one can be wonky, and the rest hopefully will be lining up okay. But this black plastic I've put on top, I've put there not for weatherproofing. In fact, if anything, it'll probably be a bad thing for weatherproofing because any condensation is inside. But it's because the aluminium foil on the insulation is going to really reflect, and because this is rough timber, there's going to be gaps in between it. So it was either somehow try and paint that aluminium foil black, or you just hide some damp proof laying around. So I just put it up there so that at least the gaps are black, not shiny aluminium foil when you see through the bits between each panel. So I'm getting ready for plastering tomorrow. I always find that it's nice when you're doing something like you know, a wet job, plastering or concrete or something. You get everything ready the day before, and then when you get to it the actual day you're going to do it, you just crack on instead of messing around, because sometimes the prep like this can take a lot longer than you think. But what I did, you saw me paint something on here, and that's just PVA. Now I didn't do that to make it sticky, I did that because we've sanded the edges of the board, if you remember. That might have been in the last video. But I don't want any of the grit from that coming off and then catching in the trowel and then running over the nice plaster and causing little you know, drags in the plaster. So I PVA'd it just to seal it, and then I've done this extra wide, extra tacky tape just to reinforce, because we're going to have slightly deeper plaster in these edges like we mentioned before. We weren't sure whether we were going to be able to fill the radius with plaster, so I've added the extra sticky, extra wide tape just to give that as much strength as possible. So I think we're about ready. You always want to get a bucket ready so that you can wash all your tools off in that one. So it's clean bucket, mixing bucket, all of our different trowels and stuff's there, got the mixer ready. So I think tomorrow, I'm no plasterer, so I always have to like do twice as much work getting things ready to have any chance of it looking half good, rather than, you know, somebody who's good will be able to just fire through this. It's not that big a job for most people, but for me, I always find plastering a bit challenging. I found it's been quite difficult to form this edge, probably because I haven't actually used a piece of gutters like I said I might do, and it's a little bit like it's not an exact curve. So I can flatten off this side all right. I've used a trowel to flatten off that side, and I've been flattening off this side, but what it sort of does is it causes this ledge here and this ledge here. And I was using the trowel, and as I was coming around it was kind of pulling it off. So I've actually found the best way to do this is I've just got a pot of water on the floor, and I've just been running my finger like just along the edge there and just along the edge there to sort of attempt to smooth the ledges. And as it dries off, it's actually working a little bit better every time I do it. The problem is with multi-finishes, it seems to pull the juice off. Like that stuff there's all creamy, but there's grit in it. So if you do it too much, it ends up just pulling all of the juice off the top and leaving all the grit, which makes it quite a bad kind of sandy texture. So you've got to be careful not to overdo it. But every time I trowel the wall, I then just come around and just go over the edges, just so there's not that like flat sharp edge there and a flat sharp edge there and a missed bit in the middle. And I'm probably going to have to get some filler out in the end to finish this off, because I'm not sure it's going to be good enough. But so far that seems to be working okay. Now I've just troweled the sides again, and you can kind of see the lines that I mean a bit better. So that's where the trowel's finished there, and then I've flattened this edge off, and there's a kind of slight ridge here and here. So those are the bits. And as it's drying, you know, on each side as I'm finishing troweling that up, you want to be more careful with the, you don't, like the first time I was just all over the place with my finger, but now as each side gets finished off, you just need to be much smaller and much smoother with the way that you, I mean, I'm not saying this like it's a guide, this is just how I've just kind of been doing it, but each time I'm just getting smaller and smaller, trying to smooth it out. I might just leave it burnished plaster because it kind of looks all right. So it's the morning after, and this is lovely and smooth. This looks really nice, but the edges that we've done are pretty rough. As I've said, what I did when I was wiping it with my hand is pulling the juice off the top and leaving the grain behind. So that wasn't ideal. And I thought about it and I was like, this is really going to be, it's rounded because I want to walk around here and you know, put your hand, people are going to want to touch this because it's a nice shape and they're going to go, oh, it's a bit different. And it's also through the kind of doorways into the other half. So it's somewhere you're naturally going to want to put your hand. So that's why I wanted it to be round, but I wanted it to be nice to touch. So I thought about sandpaper, and I thought the problem with sandpaper is you're pulling stuff out, you're scratching the surface. Because I'm going to want to keep this exposed plaster instead of painting it. I'm not going to want to fill anything on top of this. And then I had an idea, and we've done Tadalact in the past, and there's this kind of stone that you get with it, which you rub on the surface of Tadalact to compress the pores, so it kind of closes it down. And I thought, well, I'll try that on here, and it actually does a really good job. I'm not sure if this would do a really good job if you waited too long, because if it's gone really hard, then this won't work, because what this is doing is just compressing the grains into the plaster, so it now is smooth, and you can kind of hear, like you can hear the grit there, and then when you finished it, it's sort of sounds smoother. That's how you tell when it's done. I mean, you could keep going forever on this and trying to get it smooth, but I'm really just trying to get it good enough. But it works a lot better. And you might think, well, I haven't got a specialist Tadalact compressing stone. But before I went into storage to find this, I actually went through my bits and bobs drawer and found one of these stones, which is for a whiskey glass. If you don't want real ice, I don't drink ice in my whiskey anyway, I just drink it straight. But this stuff keeps it cold without melting, because it's just a stone, so you put this in the freezer. So that's a smooth stone, but if you don't have one of those either, you can just use a pebble, because all you're doing is you need something smooth. I don't know if a metal trowel would work for this. I feel like a stone is better. You want something, I don't know, maybe it would work, but I feel like stone's better. So a smooth pebble would work. This is what I started with. It might even be better, who knows. But, oh, that's it. So you want a shape like this, because this isn't perfectly flat. So the reason it was hard to trowel in the first place is because if you use a trowel, it's got a straight edge, isn't it? So when you scrape, this is a burnishing trowel, by the way. This is for Moroccan lime plaster that we did. But if you scrape that across there or down like that, you've got a straight edge on the side, and this is quite bumpy. Whereas the stone that I've got here for Tadalact is designed for that. So you see the shape, and it's curved. So you can, if you're really trying to get a good job, you can press the tip of it in and get right in any recesses. So that's why that's a funny shape. That's probably the next best. And then if you just find a nice smooth river pebble or something, it'll probably be an odd shape, and you'll be able to press different edges and things in to make it smooth. So glad that found a solution, because it means it looks the same as the rest of it, or close enough, so I'm not going to have to paint this. So I was thinking about how I was going to mount these to the ceiling, because you know they're meant to be mounted down, not up, and it's old metal, and I was kind of worried that if I just rely on the screw heads for the grip, they would eventually pull through, and I didn't want any of these falling on, you know, our heads. So I thought about using washers, and then they would kind of sit across and it would just look a bit bad. So I thought I'd 3D print some. They've got a rounded bottom on them and then a kind of recess in the top for the screw head. I ordered black, or I thought I ordered black filament, but it turned out they were lilac, so I've had to spray them all black. I kind of like my 3D work, so I started doing this in a really complicated manner. I scanned it all in, took a video around the side, and then put that into Agisoft so that I could get the 3D model out, so that I was able to model this in Fusion to get the correct shamp for, you know, the profile for the bottom, because I thought if I'm going to go to this effort, I want to make sure that this fits the roofing panel. But after doing all of that and putting it into Fusion, I thought, you know what, it's probably just going to be easier to get a straight edge across here, measure the depth, and then create the curvature manually in the software. So I ended up not using the 3D model, although I've scanned it in. I like doing it anyway, so it was kind of fun. But they seem to be working pretty well, and they just batch printed them, and you can't buy stuff like this. So it's this kind of project where you have to do it yourself. That kind of stuff comes in handy. The weather today is not really the best for cutting these roofing sheets. They're very, very difficult to cut. It's worth the effect, but I think I need a plasma cutter or something to bit through them, because the Sawzall just rips it and kind of moves the whole panel, so they're quite difficult. So I haven't done that today. I hoped I was going to get both halves done to conclude this for this week, but I don't think we're quite going to get there. We have just done the flooring upstairs. I was considering what I might like to do up here, because I was thinking about, you know, like it's just wood flooring. I was thinking about carpet, but I haven't got one of those carpet gripper tools that you kind of grip and put your knee on and pull it back. I'd also have to buy carpet. So what I've actually done is we've got this rubber, well, it's not rubber, is it? It's kind of foam flooring that we pulled out of our gym where we were before, and I've been putting that up here. I've left it off because I've got to put another piece of flooring in here. I've got to build the stairs, so I don't want to, you know, cap off the ends before I know quite where it's going to be. But we're going to have rugs. We've got loads of rugs. We're just going to put rugs all over the place, beanbags there and there, TV and kind of media stuff's going over here. So yeah, I thought I'd get that done today, because it's pretty rubbish weather outside, and that means for next week we are going to do some work on the, well, desks that used to be a table. We'll go through that in the next video. We'll get the flooring down. I really wanted to conclude the kind of construction stuff today, but so the next video was all about the features, because we're going to do the staircase with the bookshelf and the storage bits, and I wanted it to be more of a kind of furniture video, furniture features, you know, that kind of video, rather than just more construction stuff. So we'll zip through that quickly in the next video so that we're up to that stage, and then we'll crack on with the stairs, fitting the desks, and all those fun bits that are going to start to feel like it's a room instead of just a kind of empty space as it is at the minute. But it's been fun. it's been fun. I'm starting to really enjoy the space, so it's really good. The next video, I don't know. We've got that camera video that I am making that camera. It's actually all done. I've just got to put it together in a video for you. Could be the midges. I'm going to go in depth about a midge, what it is, how it works, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got the big project coming up after all this. So we're trying to clear our desk, if you like, of all the other projects. And then we've got one that'll take me quite a long time to get through. So if you'd like to come and see those kind of things, come join us. It'd be nice to have you here. We'll see you in the next one.